Shalom, family, and thank you so much for joining us for this week's weekly news update. It's always a pleasure and a privilege to join with you wherever you may be watching this from. And we're certainly thankful for every one of you who have waited around. We were a little bit late today. We had a system crash, and that does sometimes happen. I am working all day, and I sometimes forget to reset my computer. And I work with heavy files and a lot of things, and so that does sometimes cause computer systems failure, and nothing goes bad at the right time. So thank you again, all of you who were patient, and for those of you that are on the East Coast, again, I apologize for the time, and perhaps you'll have to catch us on the replay. So thank you again for stopping by. We're always appreciative of every one of you that not only are subscribed to the channel, but share the links. Many more share than subscribe, which is interesting. But anyhow, we certainly thank you for those of you that did subscribe and are part of the growing family of Remnant House. And we certainly are thankful you are here. And tonight we've got a number of things to cover. It's been a bit of a rolling day for me, so hang in there with me. We're going to cover quite a few things as we look at the news. And one of the things that we love to say around here, and it's something that we have to continue to emphasize, is that we want to be informed without being overwhelmed. For those of you that are new here, we do have a website called remnantwatch.com. You'll notice a banner at the top. This will always take you to the latest weekly news update. And of course, here we have all the stories that we're tracking and have been tracking since we began to do these broadcasts, 3 years ago, really, at this point. And one of the nice things about that is it gives us the ability to continue processing things as we see them unfold. After all, it's not all in one day, right? So we have to watch slow-moving train wrecks sometimes, ladies and gentlemen, and that is our reality. And so, unfortunately, we do live in a time period of great tribulation, great difficulty. Many people halt between two opinions. And so you are watching the results of just exactly that. And on that note, let's get into the news. And tonight's top story is war between India and Pakistan could erupt at any moment. And by the way, India and China do not have the best relations, even though they are neighbors. So that's kind of an interesting thing, because Pakistan is actually aligned with China. So India is squeezed between these two warring countries, and things could get bad. India and Pakistan both have nuclear weapons, and now they are on the verge of war. It's being reported that India is considering a military response to a horrifying terror attack that occurred in Kashmir earlier this week. And Pakistani forces are already being mobilized in case that happens. If a full-blown war erupts, it will be a really big deal. I think that's an understatement, to say the least. So what about you? What are your thoughts? Do you think Pakistan and India are about to dust it up, or do you think that's just more puffery? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. It's always appreciated when I hear from you, who are all astute students of the word and are paying attention as these things confirm the scripture and the prophecies of the times we live in. And so we're seeing a lot of change going on. And of course, we've been watching Eastern Europe. How could we not? I mean, there's tremendous warfare going on there. Not only is there a lot of warfare and loss of life, I understand something like 3,000 men per week are being lost in this conflict. What a ridiculous loss of life. No one can explain or justify that. And on top of that, what we're also getting out of this theater of operations, if you want to call it that, is horrific stories of abuse for children, other industries that sort of took on, and war is an ugly business. So, the next thing you know, organ transport starts coming out of a certain part of the world, if you know what I mean. And these things are scary to watch. So I think that there's more going on in these, machinations that we're seeing put in the news cycle. We need to be paying attention. Of course, Trump is slamming Zelensky for rejecting Ukraine-Russia negotiations, saying a deal was very close. And Russia is literally pounding them. High-level talks in London aimed at bringing a pause to fighting in Ukraine disintegrated after Secretary of State Marco Rubio and Special Envoy Steve Witkoff pulled out. And so instead, we're going to continue to see more scenes of fighting and warfare because they can't figure out which table to sit at, the round one or the square one. This all ends at a table. This all ends at a table. It gets me a little bit. I'm a grandfather. Many of you are grandparents as well, who have loved ones who might be sent into these areas of conflict. And you'd like to know that if your child or your grandson or granddaughter is going to go fight, that it's for a really good reason. I haven't seen one yet. I don't know about the rest of you, but I'm still waiting to see a really good reason for a bomb. But I digress. And speaking of explosions, look at what happened in Iran. A massive explosion at an Iranian port, possibly linked to a missile fuel. It kills 25 and injures 800. So this was massive. This literally, talk about climate change, right? We don't have to worry about climate change now with smoke like that going up. A massive explosion and fire rocked a port Saturday in southern Iran on a Shabbat, purportedly linked to a shipment of chemical ingredients used to make missile propellant, killing 25 and injuring around 800 others, folks. Not a pretty sight. Helicopters and aircraft dumped water from the air on the raging fire throughout the night and Sunday morning, and Shadi reports. So they tried desperately to deal with this, folks, but this was no joke. No one in Iran outright suggests the explosion came from an attack, but you can't rule it out. What a coincidence, don't you think? What do you guys think? Let me know in the comments, because I bet you think that's not a coincidence. I'm pretty sure we're not thinking coincidence. We didn't all go, oh, what a coincidence. What a coincidence. I mean, it's just coincidental. I don't think so. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. I'd really be interested in this one, because I feel like that one's square on the old Albert Pike nail, if you know what I mean. So we're going to continue to pay attention to these things as they unfold. And it's really good that you're not sleeping during this time, because as you see, they can move quickly. A lot of things can change on a very, rapid pace. So we have to be paying attention continuously. And in this story, Putin is ignoring Trump's Vladimir, please stop. Stop, Vladimir. Vladimir, you must stop, Vladimir. We cannot have you destroying everything. Putin ignores Trump. He's not listening. He doesn't work for you, okay? He demand by launching lethal kamikaze zones. His response was sending the drones. Putin has ignored President Donald Trump's pleas to stop attacking Ukraine and launched lethal kamikaze drones, killing 3. The Russian president used the drones to strike Kharkiv, triggering explosions and fires. It came as Trump pleaded, Vladimir, stop, on Truth Social after the Kremlin launched a deadly attack on Kiev, killing at least 10 people. It's a very, very bad thing that this president has just done. He has just risked American lives. And some of you who are military-minded and veterans understand you never do that. You cannot ever show a leader of another country, especially a potential enemy, that you don't have the stomach for war. If you're going to do it, you got to do it. And you certainly can't go on your Truth Social and go, oh, please stop. You're going to look weak. So that could cost American lives. That's not good. We don't agree with war. We don't agree with this. But going out and crying on your social media platform probably wasn't your best move. Just saying. So that attempt at some type of diplomacy via Truth Social may play to a crowd, but it actually might cost American lives. So I really don't think that was a really good idea. I'd love to hear your thoughts, folks, because, again, I talk about some of these things from a veteran's perspective, not only from the biblical perspective, but also looking at them from that perspective, right? And it is very challenging for us, especially those of you that are veterans. It's very challenging for us to see some of the decisions that are being made, and especially when they're putting young men and young women's lives in harm's way. Okay, so that is something we take very seriously. Speaking of putting people in harm's way, this report says Israel fears U.S. is moving fast toward a bad deal that won't close down Iran's path to the bomb. So Israel is deeply concerned that the U.S. is closing in on a what it calls a bad deal with Iran that will not meet Israel's stated essential conditions for ensuring the regime cannot attain nuclear weapons. I think that has left the barn. As a matter of fact, I don't think too much of the world really cares what Israel is diplomatically saying at this point. I don't know if you know it, but in the same way that America, the United States, wiped off the Gulf of Mexico, and now it is the Gulf of America, the Chinese removed Israel from their maps. So you need to know that there is not as much sympathy for this nonsense, if you will, as you may think. And so this is going to continue to get more and more dicey as we go. These guys are all connected. So when we see things like this, where Trump is to let Putin keep land seized from Ukraine, right? This is all part of the same group of people making moves and counter moves. The 7-point plan gives Kiev no clear security guarantees from the U.S. And, sorry about that, folks. They're always doing that. Donald Trump will let Vladimir Putin keep almost all the territory he has seized from Ukraine under the terms of their proposed peace deal. So he wants to be known as the peace president. I don't blame him. Anybody who's in that job certainly doesn't want people blown up. I can't think of a good reason for a bomb, but you got to kind of wonder how successful some of this is going to be. There's nasty neighborhoods that he's going into, people that are war hardened, and he's coming in saying, "Oh, please stop, please stop." So the United States needs to come in with strength, needs to bring reasonable things to the table that would help both parties come to conclusions. And true social diplomacy just isn't it. I'm just saying. As a matter of fact, not only is Iran not backing down, but they're making deals with Russia. And in Russia is to fund the construction of a new nuclear plant in Iran. So how do you think they're going to feel if you come and blow it up? On top of funding the construction of a new nuclear plant in Iran, Russia will supply Iran with 55 billion cubic meters per year. Russia will fund the construction of a new nuclear plant in Iran, Iranian oil minister Moshe Boknejad said in the closing ceremony of the 18th Joint Economic Cooperation Commission on Friday. The two countries will undertake the construction of new nuclear energy facilities and the completion of phase 2 and 3 of the Bushehr power plant using Moscow's credit line. So interesting. They're allowing them to have this. So it's essentially an affront to the United States and to Israel, saying, we dare you. This is going to get dicey, folks, and I do think it's about to get worse. And certainly we're seeing it economically. And this is something that we warned about, that there would be an economic conflict, and that conflict would continue to cause serious damage. And right now we're in the midst of a trade war, and it does look like it might be starting to soften, but nevertheless, the trade war threatens to shut down Chinese plastic factories. So the repercussions are starting to hit both sides, as Chinese plastics factories heavily reliant on U.S. ethane imports are at a risk of widespread shutdowns due to tariffs implemented during the U.S.-China trade war. Hey, maybe they'll get all those islands of trash out of the ocean and recycle those. Who knows? The lack of alternative ethane suppliers and existing long-term contracts make it difficult for Chinese factories to find alternative solutions, leading to financial losses. The economic indicators suggest a potential slowdown in China's GDP growth, further exacerbating the challenges faced by the plastics industry and the overall economy. And what is China if they don't have plastic? I mean, after all, what they got a stamp made in China on something. They definitely like to do that on plastic. So I can't imagine their economy works too well without their repping, right? And so, and as a matter of fact, I don't expect this to go on very long. Now, I believe that a lot of this stuff was just done to manipulate and reposition. Some of this is really just changing negotiations. After all, it's one thing for you to think something has repercussions, but it's another thing for economies to shut down and for there to be repercussions right in front of you. As a way of bringing leaders to a table when they've got folks that are hungry. I think that is being tried in both countries. So unfortunately, the citizenry both in China and the United States are in the crosshairs of this economic war. And U.S. Treasury Secretary says trade war with China is not sustainable, folks. So again, I'd love your thoughts in the comments. What do you think about this trade war? And do you think this is part of what we saw in the book of Revelation concerning a day's wages costing a man, or a loaf of bread, rather, costing a man a day's wages, right? And so here we see that U.S. Treasury Secretary, Scott Bassett, said in Tuesday's speech that the ongoing tariff showdown against China is unsustainable, and he expects a de-escalation in the trade war between the world's two largest economies. And in fact, we're already seeing that, folks. They're starting to calm this down. But in a private speech in Washington for J.P. Morgan Chase, Bassett also cautioned that talks between the United States and China had yet to formally start. U.S. President Donald Trump placed import taxes of 145% on China. I want you to think about that, guys. So you're buying an air conditioner. China says it's $300 for the air conditioner. Now we got a tariff, right? So now it's $750 for the air conditioner. And most of that's the tariff. It's more than the price of the item, 145% more than the cost of the item. So this is really wild as we're watching this. And again, I love your comments in the chat. Definitely would love them in the bottom of the video so we can keep this conversation going all week. One of the things that the chat's great, but we got to put the comments in, because I tell you, sometimes these stories continue to unfold, and you guys make good digs. And I'd love for you to share those things in the comments so that we can keep track of as these stories unfold, because we keep moving. And stories don't wait for us, do they? The world keeps moving. As a matter of fact, speaking of moving, some things are not moving. Right now, European power outages is caused by what they're calling rare atmospheric phenomenon. A rare atmospheric phenomenon. Now, didn't I warn you guys repeatedly? I'm pretty sure if we look back in transcripts of previous broadcasts, and I'm sure that'll be done, then you'll notice that I spoke repeatedly about power outages and these solar things and these solar flares being left in the narrative for this very reason. Spain and parts of Portugal and France on Monday were hit by a widespread power outage caused by, quote, a rare atmospheric phenomenon, according to Reed's Energetias Nacionales, whatever that is. Must be Portuguese. Grid operator. The context. The power outages brought public transport to a standstill, nothing moving there, and caused significant traffic jams and delayed flights. So, again, folks, this war on travel seems to be going in various ways, but I also want to, kind of note that what we're seeing is a continued disruption of normal life. So this is part of. This is a bit of psychological warfare. If you know psychological warfare, if you study psychological warfare, well, these are tactics used to disrupt societies. And you're going to continue to see these things. Unfortunately, it's hard to figure out who the bad guys are. So this is going to get dicey as we go. Remember, all these things will continue until the king comes. So you need to buckle up, Buttercup, and get tough. All right. And so these power outages, if you're in Europe, you should have known this kind of stuff was coming. Widespread power outages hit Spain and Portugal. You should have known these guys are going to be playing games. Europe's square in there. Europe's a blue state, man. Europe's a blue state. Okay. So what are they gonna do? They're gonna do stuff in their blue state. Europe's a blue state. So just understand that. And that's where the battle really is. And it's going to continue to be manifest there. The Middle East is continuing to reshape, as well as Syria is now claiming its willingness to join the Abraham Accords. Some of you may remember that from Trump's first term. He had the Abraham Accords, and that was actually quite an effort to try to bring peace to the area. Didn't really hold, but at least it was attempted. And Mills says that he would deliver a note from Donald Trump from the Syrian president. So Syria is willing to join the Abraham Accords under the correct conditions, Syrian President Ahmed al-Sharaa told U.S. Representative Corey Mills in a meeting on Saturday. In a Thursday Bloomberg article, the U.S. Republican representative from Florida said he held talks with the former leader of Ha'at al-Sham regarding economic sanctions and peace between Damascus and Jerusalem. And he told Bloomberg that he would deliver a letter from al-Sharaa to U.S. President Donald Trump, adding that he planned to brief him on his conversation when he returned to Washington. So efforts are being made to realigned, and hopefully cooler heads will prevail in some of these conflicts, because, folks, it looks like we're being set up one way or the other. And remember that those prophecies, especially that Albert Pike prophecy, is competing with the scripture. So you got to remember, you got two spiritual groups here. You got that which is written and recorded from ancient time, the things that are not yet done, saying, my counsel shall stand, and I will do all my pleasure according to his word, Isaiah 46:10, versus, the Albert Pike crew, who want to bring conflict between these factions. So we need to keep an eye on this, because this is definitely manifesting right in front of us. And as a matter of fact, Trump is entering into that whole arena with yet another effort to try to tip the scales. And he's this exclusive Trump poised to offer Saudi Arabia over $100 billion arms package, sources say. And I think this is an attempt to bring Saudi Arabia back from the brink, if you will, put the United States back in good stead. And the United States is poised to offer Saudi Arabia an arms package worth well over $100 billion. 6 sources with direct knowledge of the issue told Reuters, saying the proposal was being lined up for an announcement during U.S. President Donald Trump's visit to the kingdom in May. The offered package comes after the administration of former President Joe Biden unsuccessfully tried to finalize a defense pact with Riyadh. So, made them look bad, did we? Had to make Joe look bad. So that makes sense. I'm going to go do the deal Joe couldn't do. Well, these guys are friends, so that was basically a loyalty thing. He's like, I'll wait till he's out, and then I'll sign the deal with you guys. That's all that was. So again, I think that suddenly signals a realignment? No, not really. I think these guys have already planned what they're going to do. They're bringing hardware into the area, and we're going to see the scripture fulfilled. The end. All right, so that's the way it's going to be. It's not going to be pretty. It's going to be ugly, and that's why we pray every single day for those in that theater of operation. There's crazy continuing to go on, and it's not just these war things. There's other things that are happening as well. I'm going to throw this in here. It's kind of a little bit of an interruption, but it's really indicative of the spiritual atmosphere that we continue to find ourselves in. Vancouver driver plows into a crowd of people attending a Filipino festival and killing multiple victims. The suspect was a resident, apparently, of Vancouver, and was arrested at the scene and remains in custody. And so this is horrible, but this is what the kind of things that we're seeing in our world that I think is reflective of the degradation of morality, of central families and community influences. These things are gone. And as a result, what we're seeing is continued and increased lawlessness. And what did he say? Because sin abound, because iniquity abound, the love of many will wax cold. And so we're seeing just that. The love of many, like the scripture promise, is waxing cold. And some of these conflicts are coming inside the very countries, that they're in. So we're going to continue to see more and more difficulties in the nations as they basically try to grapple with a new world. By the way, did you guys know that 10 million Americans were told not to leave their homes today as toxic? Well, not necessarily today. This was actually the 24th. But we're not allowed to leave their homes as toxic chemicals sparks air quality emergency. This is not the first time. So now we had the one in, South Carolina or Georgia, where they had the toxic spill. And now officials in New York City have issued an air quality alert telling more than 10 million Americans to stay inside due to wildfire smoke. Yeah, that's right, folks. We've got a story. A fire in neighboring New Jersey has burned through more than 15,000 acres since Tuesday, when it erupted in Ocean County near the shoreline. The fire is about 54 miles south of New York City and roughly 50% contained, so 50% not contained. Fire crews may not be able to fully contain the blaze until rain falls this weekend. So they may be battling this all week. And in fact, I think we have another story on that as well, because it is quite a serious situation that they're finding themselves in with these fires. And I didn't realize it had gotten this bad, guys. Did you guys know this? I didn't realize this. I had checked out on this particular story. Let's see what date this was. Yeah, this was the 23rd. So this was the day before. And New Jersey wildfires burned thousands of acres and triggered evacuation. So look at the scene, guys. Whoo, that was rough. Let's go back and take a quick look at that again. Whoa. Whoa, those trees are burning. I said those trees are really that's trees burning there, folks. Them trees. That's real fire there. I said that's real fire there. Uh-oh. Uh-oh, Bubba. Things are not good on the East Coast. Okay? And when 10 million people can't even go outside, well, I don't have to tell you how bad that is, right? So we are definitely seeing some change, guys, and I hope you're aware and staying, intelligent as we go. This war, by the way, is manifesting in the form of your things, your day-to-day life, and you may not realize it. You may say, well, I didn't know we were at war. Really? You didn't think we were at war? Gen Zs are so terrified of a recession that they're ditching doom spending, ordering Happy Meals, and using ChatGPT for free therapy. They're having such a rough time. Gen Z is preparing for potential shutdown. And I tell you what, it is a bit of a recession or a depression moment. And anytime there is a shift in the fundamental way in which the nation runs, I'll give you an example. And I mentioned it a few times in the last a couple of weeks. How many remembered the time when the Yellow Pages were the critical advertising piece for your business? And if you weren't in the Yellow Pages, you weren't nothing. You were nobody. And that thing took a year to come out. So you had to plan a year in advance and hope you could survive until you were in the Yellow Pages and can get calls. Well, that moment came and that moment left. And those people that stayed back there, they didn't make the transition. I pray that you're not that kind of person, that you're not the kind of people that stay behind, insisting that we don't progress when everything in Earth's history says, you better stay with the cloud. You better keep moving. Amen. It's one of the challenges that we have as we continue down these roads. And empty store shelves could be empty by summer. So if you don't think this is a war, I got news for you. It's real. Store shelves could be empty by summer as China imports come to a halt, folks. Shoppers could begin seeing emptier store shelves as soon as May, with mom and pop stores the most likely to face shortages as goods, the New York Post reports. China imports scheduled to arrive in the ports of Los Angeles and Long Beach May 4th and May 10th are down 43% from the same period last year, according to Vision data. So 145% tariffs may sound good, but they don't actually work because nobody pays them. They just don't order the stuff. And they hope that by not ordering and waiting, that will go away and then they can resume. So a lot of businesses are struggling now as a result. And they're using this, by the way, as an excuse. I'm sure the airlines will figure out a reason why the tariffs cost you more money for luggage. Don't you expect that? Verizon, AT&T, and T-Mobile are prepared to raise prices on consumers because of Trump's trade war. So that gave them an excuse. He said, trade war, that's it. All they need is a war. The smartphone ecosystem has avoided the biggest brunt of President Trump's tariffs for now. But if that for now ends, major phone carriers appear poised to dump the higher cost of smartphones into the lap of consumers. What a shock. Trump earlier this month exempted smartphones and some other electronics from his reciprocal tariffs, though he left a 20% fentanyl tariff on China intact. The exemption could prove temporary, keeping the prospect of 145% tariffs on China, where Apple makes its iPhones, in play. Again, a lot of that is a theatrics and negotiation. You remember the TikTok issue that they wanted to bring to the table, and so I think that's as much a part of it as anything else. So again, it's very challenging. And is it going to affect us? Absolutely. If you're a Dollar Tree shopper, if you don't have a network, you're not part of a family, you're certainly not connected with a house, well, you're going to struggle differently than people that are banding together in this hour. And that's what people are starting to do. Folks, people are starting to figure out that the scripture is pretty clear about us being together, about us being in one accord, and that it's in fact that unity that is the defense against days like this coming. And so those that try to go the Lone Ranger route, they usually don't make it. The people that are wise are the ones that band together. After all, Psalm 133 tells us, there Yahuwah commands the Baraka. And the godfather of AI is warning that AI could take control from humans. People haven't understood what's coming. I got thoughts on this, but I would love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Please don't be shy. I really love your comments about AI. Okay, well, that rhymed. Don't be shy. Tell me about AI. No, really. Godfather of AI, Geoffrey Hinton, was awakened in the middle of the night last year with news he had won the Nobel Prize in Physics. He said he never expected such a recognition. I dreamt about winning one for figuring out how the brain works, but I didn't figure out how the brain works. But I won anyway. The 17-year-old researcher earned the award for his pioneering work in neural networks, proposing in 1986 a method to predict the next word in a sequence, now the foundational concept behind today's large language models. Which, folks, let me help you. A large language model is just fancy software. That's all it is. It can simulate a conversation. It can simulate a lot of things because it has search capability and a huge database made by search engines. But this notion that it is actually life is laughable. The reality is that in order for it to take on life, it would need life to inject into it. And in reality, what you're looking at is software. And so I do think that we are overhyping in our society the potential for artificial intelligence to do the kind of harm that they're talking about. Well, certainly if they put it in a robot or put it in charge of nuclear plants, maybe that could be detrimental, as AI agents do tend to go a bit rogue. However, there are systems being in place even as we speak that are harnessing and controlling those things. So it doesn't quite work the way they're suggesting. The AI does have to obey certain rules. It can't function outside those rules, regardless of anything else. And honestly, it's quite limited in its ability to think outside the box. Trust and believe that. So you'll always be able to outsmart it as long as your mind is renewed. After all, we have a sound mind. I'll tell you what's not so sound is these judges are fighting against the Trump administration. Apparently, he's taking that personally. If FBI arrests Milwaukee judge alleging she interfered in immigration operation, and the arrest marks a significant escalation in the Trump administration crackdown on immigration, as well as in the battles with judges across the country. This is getting interesting, guys. The FBI arrested a county judge in Milwaukee on Friday who got a little over his skis, apparently. And she obstructed federal authorities who were seeking to detain an undocumented immigrant by escorting the man and his defense attorney through a non-public jury door. And so they ended up arresting this judge. And I think that's interesting. And I think that law should not apply with deference. So that if you're going to arrest this person, you have to arrest, you've got to deal with things uniformly. So it's interesting to watch this. This is a story we're going to continue to watch. It's not often you see a judge arrested. So I think we're going to watch this one because I think precedent is being set. Speaking of precedent being set, how many remember the 2008-2009 crisis that wiped out tremendous fortunes? A lot of people lost a tremendous amount in this time period. Well, we're heading into a time period that's looking pretty reminiscent, folks. March home sales dropped to their slowest pace since 2009, and sales of previous owned homes in March fell 5.9%, and inventory was up nearly 20%. And folks, I got to tell you something. They're not processing foreclosures, and they're not dumping onto the market their full inventory. So the fact that that number is still that high, even with those factors in play, tells you just how bad it really is. So don't let anybody tell you that everything's, just going to be around the corner. It's going to be great. No, it's not. There's going to be continuous pain and difficulty coming. This is, again, why you've got to change your patterns. The people that adjust the fastest are the ones who usually endure. Either direction and monetary change goes, guys, in your life or in a country, makes no difference. Dramatic up or down, either way, is potentially lethal. It's very dangerous. Think about lottery winners. They suddenly go up, very lethal, bad on families. Suddenly go down, very lethal, bad on. So massive movement in either direction is very bad because people don't adjust to those new levels or new challenges quickly enough. It's a word to the wise. Always plan on change and then adjust mentally so that when it occurs, if it occurs, you're not overwhelmed. Remember, we want to be informed without being overwhelmed. So I like to let you know these things so that you can start planning now, not to scare you, so you can go, okay, this is going to happen. It looks like we're getting set up for this. Let's pay attention. This is why empty shelves and painful shortages of certain items are coming. This is not done yet. We're about to find out what happens when thousands of very popular products are suddenly no longer available for sale. A lot of Amazon shoppers have been shocked to learn that some of their favorite products have already disappeared. In fact, there are entire stores on Amazon that are now completely gone. So this is wiping out entire businesses that no longer have a product to sell because their supplier is being blocked by tariffs. So on the long haul, this will force manufacturing and stuff that's now made in China be made in, I don't know, New Mexico or something. But here's the thing, that's going to take a while. So this pain they're talking about, it ain't going anywhere for a minute. Americans are considering filing for bankruptcy, and it hits its highest level since the pandemic. So there's no pandemic, but 2025, for some reason, is turning into the bankruptcy year. Bankruptcy filings are on the rise in 2025. This year, over 140,000 bankruptcy filings were reported in the U.S., and Americans thinking about bankruptcy are tied to financial factors like tariffs and consumer debt. Now, I'm not so sure tariffs are really the reason for that, but they could be. They certainly are closing businesses. A new report reveals that more people are filing for bankruptcy in the first half of 2025, which is the highest level since 2020. And you could understand it in 2020. I mean, we all know what was going on there. We could see clearly now the junk is gone, right? But what is going on in 2025 that we're seeing that? Doesn't that strike you as odd? I think a lot of people got suckered by the, don't pay the rent and, suspended, suspended evictions and so forth. And they got way behind. And I don't know what their mentality was and what the thinking was, but America went down the road, went down the COVID road and did not come out healthy economically. And so again, folks, this portends, what's good news for you who are responsible is this portends that they're going to have to do wholesale things society-wide. That's good for the people that have already been responsible, because you should just have that much more advantage going forward. But you do have, we as a society, they're going to have no choice but to pick up that lowest rung. Otherwise, we're going to have just people in the street. And so that just wasn't going to work. But I do have to caution you about some of the things that are going on in our country. Now, I don't have a news story about this particular factoid. I instead was searching on Chat GPT. And I was investigating something that I commented on last week. I mentioned that there's only so much beef being processed in the United States. As a matter of fact, I found out through Chat GPT, just asking you, that there's approximately about 15 billion tons of beef that is slaughtered in the U.S. And then it's another 2 to 3 billion tons are imported. Pretty good amount, don't you think, guys? It's only one problem. There's 38 billion tons of U.S. beef sold in the U.S. every year. So we just accounted for imported and for slaughtered, and it's less than half. You tell me what they're eating. Chad couldn't tell me. Chad had no idea. You awake yet? 38 billion tons they sell, but they only harvest under 20 billion tons. Where's the other 18 to 20 billion tons coming from? What is that? It's a worthy question. You don't have to believe me. Go ask Chad. As a matter of fact, things are so bad, people are financing their groceries out there. Why? Because they're not getting solutions. And this is one of the reasons why we need Alliance. More Americans are financing groceries with buy now, pay later loans. Can you believe this? And more are paying those bills late, survey says. A Lending Tree survey found 25% of buy now, pay later users are funding grocery purchases with the loans from up to 14% in 2024. The survey said 41% of respondents said they made a late payment on a buy now, pay later loan in the past year, up from 34% in the previous year. The figures are the latest evidence that some consumers are having trouble affording essentials such as groceries under the pressure of high prices and interest rates. And I think that it is gotten to the place where people are deciding whether they're going to eat or pay their bills. And it's a very difficult time out there. And that is the Great Depression. That is a Great Depression. That is what it looks like. And if you thought you were going to see certain pictures, well, that might fool you. But this is incredibly depressing. Who's not depressed? I think this is depressing, especially in 3D printed beef. That's how many are now all of a sudden going, okay, where's the butcher shop? I want to see the actual cow now. I don't know about everybody else, but I ain't eating no more mystery meat. Well, yeah, because there's something that's meat-like. And I'm asking it all kinds of questions, guys. And please, please, please put your comments in this video. If you've done some homework in this area, especially in the area of meat, because I am fascinated by the fact that nearly 40 billion tons are sold in the U.S., but they can only account for less than half of that either being slaughtered or imported. So I covered both. Imported or slaughtered. You with me? Anybody else a little freaked out? Okay. Just thought I'd mention it in case you needed to know. 42% of Americans under 30 say they're barely getting by financially, as Harvard study finds. And so young Americans are sounding the alarm about their finances, and many of them got tricked into leaving their homes and starting independent lives only to be financially ruined and struggling to make ends meet or getting it by with limited security. That, according to a survey, 2,096 adults, 18 to 29, many of them unmarried, got no business out there, but that's where they are. Conducted by Harvard's Institute of Politics between March 14th and the 25th. The survey found that among that age group, financial insecurity most affected women, Hispanics, and those without college degrees. Not so certain the college degree works that much, but it might get you that job at Starbucks, whereas the others may not get it. So there's that. Other than that, I don't know that it's really helping folks out there as much. It may actually be hindering them because there's an entitlement that comes with it. And I can tell you that employers aren't big on entitled people. So maybe we're going to see more change there. Perhaps a little hardship, hard times, make strong men. So maybe this will make some strong people. And this is what we're hoping for, certainly, to pull out of this as a country and as a family, if you will. And as we see the day approaching, let us continue to exhort one another. Did you know there was a recall on bread? Now, if you ask me, and it's just my opinion, I think there should be neighborhood bread people. The bread lady, okay? The neighborhood bread lady. And she makes bread. And you go over and you buy bread from her. The end. I think that's a wonderful plan. I'm all done with that plan. That's the totality of the plan. And the fact that we keep giving this job away to people we don't know or trust is scary. U.S. nationwide recall for bread of all things, sold in U.S. that may contain shards of glass that could slice throats. You've got to be kidding me. You've got to be kidding me. And I was just talking to one of my very dear friends about sending me some bread. And we're talking about this very issue. An urgent recall has gone out for bread sold out throughout the States. Shards of glass. Are you kidding me? The U.S. Food and Drug Administration issued the recall. I sound like Paul Begley. Are you kidding me? Okay. And being alerted in the upper crust bakery that glass fragments have been found at the top of their breads and rolls. Well, hopefully it's not a very large number, and they got a hold of that. We certainly have seen a number of scares. Doesn't it seem like they're always telling us about something like that? Seems like it's all the time. And so, folks, be aware. I really would recommend we all learn how to bake our own bread and bake a lot of things that we trust others to make. I mean, I know it's harder to do than say, but nevertheless, you can see where the dangers are. We trust a lot. We don't really know what's in that plastic package. It looks nice. It looks perfect, fits right in the slot in the grocery store, but what's really in it? And what happened after it got put into plastic? Is it now partially plastic? There's all kinds of things like that we're learning, right? So these are very, very interesting times. And by the way, guys, you remember that story about that rare, like, doomsday fish? Okay, come on, fishermen. You guys are on top of these things, right? I don't know much about these fish, but this is really weird. So we got another one of these, a rare 5-foot long twilight zone fish washed up on the Oregon shore. And somebody says, I wouldn't touch it. A haunting surprise surfaced from the shadowy depths of the Pacific Ocean on the Oregon coast last week. A fang-toothed predator. Look at this thing. Woo, buddy. Okay. It's a beastly creature. That's what it's called. A beastly looking creature identified as a long-nosed lancet fish, stunned locals when it washed up on the seaside beach, Oregon, with its tail, a snail-like dorsal fin, arcing menacingly above its eel-like body. Yikes. And you got to kind of wonder, with the earthquakes and volcanoes and things like that going on, are we seeing major shifting? And are we seeing, things that are down on the bottom of the ocean getting shoved to the top? Because that's one of those bottom dwellers right there, right? So they were saying, though, one other fish that you don't normally even see that fish above a certain, below a certain line, or above a certain line, rather. And yet we're seeing them. So that's a very interesting time. And it certainly portends of difficult days. So again, folks, pay attention. And again, we want to encourage you to be a people that know your friends and your family and connect with them. And of course, the U.S. government is going to restrict any beef that's coming from Mexico. Now, they'll tell you it's because of screwworm, right? So they're worried about screwworm. Okay. And officials are saying they're not going to allow the importing of Mexican beef, even though what we just told you. President Donald Trump administration warned on Saturday that it will restrict livestock imports from Mexico if that country's government does not intensify its fight against a damaging pest called the New World screwworm. U.S. Agricultural Secretary Brooke Rollins, in a letter Saturday to her Mexican counterpart, said she will restrict the importation of animal commodities if those issues are not resolved by Wednesday. And so they're putting a lot of pressure on external sources, again, with sort of no real solution, for that. So I don't know. I really think that a lot of what we're seeing is, again, theatrics, but nevertheless, it continues to come back to us. And lastly, in tonight's array of stories, this is always difficult and challenging for us to share these kinds of stories about churchianity kind of collapsing. But this was also part of the ancient prophecies. And so we see Bishop T.D. Jakes is going to hand over the Potter's house to his daughter and son-in-law. This was just reported. And many of you may know that T.D. Jakes was associated with P. Diddy and that entire thing that is now being litigated. So it looks to me like this is a repercussion. Bishop T.D. Jakes announced at church on Sunday that he's handing over the leadership to the Potter's House megachurch in Dallas, Texas, to his daughter Sarah Jakes Roberts and son-in-law Ture Roberts. I can't afford, especially after November, to risk something happening to me and you be a sheep without a shepherd. Okay. So, going to pass it right on down the line. Folks, again, we see a lot of things that make us very caution us considerably. And these are the kinds of things that we need to be very cautious about. When we see the collapse of these things, these are not just, these excuses that they're using are not real. The reality is that disobedience is being judged. Disrespect to the throne, disrespect to the things of the kingdom are not being tolerated at the same level that they once were. In other words, grace is lifting, and you're noticing it. You're noticing it all over the country and all over the world. After all, whirlwinds are a result of idolatry. And as I shared with you, there are people that don't even understand that yet. And so we have to continue to encourage and help everyone we can to understand the repercussions of disobedience to the word of the living Elohim. Well, that's it for tonight. I don't have much more to share with you. So I'm thankful for those of you that joined us, and I pray this broadcast has been a barakah to all of you. Good night.